Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy Bronstein. I'm a PFAFF educator, and today I'm glad that you've decided to join me because we're going to do a lot of fun stuff. I'm going to talk about various ideas for decorations for your Passover table. Now, I'm going to assume that most of you are Jewish. However, I'm also going to assume that there possibly might be some people that have gotten invited to a Seder that aren't Jewish and would like to perhaps create a hostess gift of some sort, or at least know a little bit about what's going on. So I will give a little bit of background information, but mostly it's going to be about sewing and embroidery. And my plan is to start out by sharing with you a project that I made that could be made with a sewing only machine, or it could be made with a sewing only machine with a circular attachment, or it could be made with embroidery, and it could be done a variety of ways that I'll go into as I show it to you. But for the most part, decorations for the Seder table are generally for a matzah cover. For those of you that may not be Jewish, during Passover, we do not eat leavened bread. We eat matzah, which is this flat bread. And because we're all having matzah at the dinner table, there'll be a pile of matzah on a plate, and most people have a decorative cover over it. Then the other potential sewing project that would be nice is to have something for the afikomen. The afikomen is a piece of matzah that's been broken off during the meal. It's placed in, usually wrapped in something. I have made a number of kind of pouches for the afikomen, because generally what happens is if there's children at the table, we will hide the afikomen, and later on, the first child to find it will get a piece of chocolate or something like that. It's a little bit of a game. And so the afikomen would be a different cover than the cover that goes over the matzah to begin with. Now, there's other things that you can make, and if we have time, I'll go into those things as well. But I'm going to start with sewing, as I said, with a matzah cover. So on the Passover table, we generally will have a Seder plate. And the Seder plate almost always has 6 indentations that are circular, because there's 6 traditional foods that are placed on the plate that represent part of the story of the Exodus from Egypt, because we tell that story every Passover at the Seder table. Seder just means order, but it's the name of the meal that we have at Passover. So given that this is a common symbol or design, what I did is I made a matzah cover incorporating that design that could be done in sewing. So I made this matzah cover, and you can see the whole thing in this camera view, and then I'm going to give you a close-up of parts of it in another camera view. But looking at this design, it's an applique here, circle applique, and then there's these little circular appliques to represent the 6 different foods that we generally have on the Seder plate. And we all have most of us, I would imagine, in our sewing machines have some sort of sewing font. So you could use the sewing font to put the name of the particular item, like Beitza or Charoset. And I did do it in embroidery, but you could do it in sewing. And because this is applique, there's a lot of different ways to do applique. You could do turned applique and do it completely by hand, or do it by machine with a blanket stitch, this big applique. I created the whole design on the Creative Icon and stitched it out in embroidery, but we'll get to that later. Another idea of a way that you could create this is with the circular attachment. The circular attachment, actually, let's show you this up a little closer first. So here's a close-up of part of, I can't get the whole thing in the screen right now, but you'll see that, we have Maror here and Beitza, Karpas, And I had put a little mini design, embroidery design in each circle. If you wanted to, I was thinking that it might be nice to make something like this and then give one of the children a fabric marker and have them tell them to draw an egg here, you know, or to draw some greens here. And that might be a fun project for them. But you could do one of our lovely large sewing stitches that we have on our machine. So there's a number of ways you could decorate this in sewing. But if you were to want to make these circles in with the circular attachment, which is this, I'll show you how you would go about doing that. First of all, I want to tell you that on April 21st, I'm going to do a whole Facebook Live on the circular attachment. So I'm going to kind of go over the circular attachment very quickly because there's a lot of other ground I want to cover. And if you're interested in it, just tune back in on April 21st. Okay, so this is the circular attachment. It is a sort of a deceptively simple attachment. It has a slider here and a pin that holds your fabric in place. Now, this fits on many machines. It's been around for a long time. You just have to have the right one for your machine. You need to have these two holes that are on the stitch plate, here and here, here and here, and because that's what it fits into, and that's what holds it in place. So it snaps right in there like that. Now, when you use the circular attachment, it's a good idea not to use your cutter because your cutter is going to hit up against these metal pieces that are holding the circular attachment in place. And I am a creature of habit. I put painter's tape over my scissors button because otherwise I'll hit it every time. The painter's tape is enough to get me to not do that. And that's what I'd recommend that you do, so you don't by habit hit the cutter every time you get done. So now I'm going to show you what you would do to make those circles for the sort of pseudo Seder plate design. So I'm getting my fabrics here. Now, I have my backing fabric, then I have the piece for the applique, and you want to put stabilizer underneath because that helps it to spin very easily. And if you're going to do any decorative stitches, you're going to need stabilizer anyway. So what you do is you take your push pin and you put it in the center where you want your circle to be. And then that gets placed into the slider. And there are numbers here. If you want to make a circle of a certain number of millimeters or inches, you can do that with this slider. But I generally just kind of eyeball it. And what you want to do is before you start sewing, you want to just sort of spin it around to make sure it's not going to run off your applique fabric. And see, now it is on that side. So I'm going to make the circle a bit smaller. That looks good. Okay, now I'm going to just put a straight stitch on. And then I'm going to start stitching. And you'll see that I'm just kind of petting it as I'm going along to keep any bubbles from not forming, you know, make sure that the fabric is nice and flat and smooth. Now, the people who are observant are probably wondering, why did she not put the IDF down with the OA foot? I had the 2A foot on because I had previously done a decorative stitch, so I couldn't put the IDF down, but since it's a straight stitch, that would be a good idea. Now, typically, I'd hit those scissors right now, but I don't want to do that because I've got the circular attachment on. So I'm just going to put my foot up, pull my pin out, and now you see I have this really nice circle. Now I can go a few different directions from this point. Now, if I had wanted to do needle turn applique, I could have used just the white fabric and the stabilizer and done my circle, and then trimmed outside of the circle and turn under that extra fabric to do needle turn. This is one way to get, you know, really good circle to guide you in cutting out a circle that's even is using the circular attachment. But now what I would do is, first of all, put the pin back immediately, because if you lay it on the side of your sewing machine, when you turn your head, it jumps off onto the floor every time. So just put that back right away. Now I'm going to trim very close around here because I'm going to do a kind of a raw edge applique. So I would just get my applique scissors and get in there and trim as closely as I can around here. Now, through the miracles of the internet and my preparedness, I did already make one and cut it, so you don't have to watch me cutting this. So I made one where I had done the same thing, and now I have it cut out. That would be the next step. So I have a question here. Does the circular attachment fit any PFAFF machine? I have a creative vision. Yes, it should fit your machine. There's probably some really old machines that it does not. However, it does fit that machine. And if you wonder about any foot or any attachment, if you go to the PFAFF site on the internet, pfaff.com, there is an area that hopefully my helpers here will post a link to. There's a link to our accessory guide. And I believe it's page 5 of the accessory guide. It lists every machine that PFAFF's made for the last probably 20 or 30 years. And it will give you the category of your machine. Then you look on the box of the accessory or foot and see if that category of machine will work with that particular accessory or foot. All the boxes are marked, all the feet are marked. So that way you know before you purchase that it's going to work for your particular machine. So I'm 99% sure you won't have a problem, but you just have to make sure you get the right circular attachment. I believe there's 2 different ones. One's for older machines and then one's for like the Creative Icon. That I'm not 99% sure of, but I'm 99% sure of that there's one that fits your machine. Okay, so we now have our circle that's been cut out. Then I would just find the hole where I originally stuck my pin and put the pin back in and then stick it into my slider. I don't want to move the slider at all because what I'm going to do is I would do a decorative stitch around the edge here. So I've already done that, so you don't have to sit and watch that. I took this, I did it with a blue applique on white, and then did a scallop stitch from the satin menu using the circular attachment. So you can make some nice appliques. You know, you can use decorative stitches. You can make it look a little bit more kind of like shabby chic using other stitches, you know, whatever, you know, is suitable for your particular project. And you can make little circles when it's way up here and much bigger circles when you go all the way out to the outer rim. That's a 10-inch diameter circle. So particularly if you don't have a embroidery machine, the circular attachment is a really great attachment to have. It's simple, but there's a lot of things you can do with it. And like I said, I'm doing a Facebook Live on April 21st. So you'll be able to see a lot of ideas of what you can do with the circular attachment. So just to kind of recap that idea, you could use the circular attachment to make the big circle and then use it to make, you know, you would put a dot so you know where to place your pin and some white fabric and do these little circles, and then use your one of your sewing fonts to put the names if you wanted to, or just use the circles as your design. So this could all be done in sewing. You can see hopefully on the camera that because I did it in embroidery, the satin stitches are all very nice and uniform. So it's it's easier if you have an embroidery machine. And now I'm going to show you how I would go about creating this design for embroidery in the applique creator function of the creative icon. So I'm going to switch my camera over to my screen on the creative icon. And right now I'm in sewing mode. So I'm going to touch the little house icon at the bottom so I can go back to my starting screen and get into embroidery. Then once I'm in embroidery, I don't need my designs open. I need to go down to the bottom where it says applique creator. And I'm going to touch applique creator. And then once I'm in applique creator, I have a choice of different shapes that I want my applique to be. I have these basic shapes, and then I've got these like crazy dingbats. And there's also ways to make these shapes, to morph them. Like you can make the circle an oval. You can make the star kind of funky looking. So there's ways that these are not the only shapes that you can choose for applique. And there's also letters and numbers. But I would choose a circle. So now I have my circle. I'm going to touch this icon to get that out of the way. Then I'm going to go into edit. And if I touch this button down here, it tells me the diameter of my circle. So, you know, I probably, depending upon the size of my matzo cover, I could decide how many millimeters I want it to be, and I could make it bigger or smaller by touching these arrows. But let's just say that's the size that I wanted for the big circle. If I'm fine with that particular satin stitch, then I can just touch OK. Or I could go into my stitches and pick a different stitch that I want this circle to be finished off with. Or there are these suggestions that are particularly good for doing applique. Now I'm just going to say OK or click OK. Then I have to deselect by touching outside of that circle. And I'm just going to do that, basically that same maneuver 6 more times and place those 6 little circles. So I go into applique creator again and choose this is the load shape button. Choose a circle. This time I'm going to close this. I need to make this much smaller. So I've got to touch one of these corners and drag it down and then pull it over to position. I think it needs to be smaller than that if I'm going to get 6 in there. And then once I get one that I like the size of, I can go down to edit and I can just copy that and then I don't have to make one each time. So I'm going to click on OK first. Actually, don't go down to edit. I have to OK that I like that size and shape. And then I can go into edit. And then this is the copy symbol, a piece of paper on top of another. And then I can just touch and drag and position them where I want them to be. And I'm not going to take the time to get them perfectly positioned. I'm just giving you the idea of how you could do it. And these are definitely not perfectly positioned, but you get the idea. We need to have 6, and they're not going to take the time to get them where they actually should be. But once I'm happy with it, I'm going to touch outside of the circle to deselect. And I would spend more time on positioning these. And then I just go into my font and find a small font to put the names underneath. So I think I did maybe 12 point size of pouty. Once you choose your font, you'll get your keyboard. So I could put in Carpas. And when I'm happy with it, I click OK. I touch the green icon to close that, and then just drag that over to where I want it to be. And you just keep playing with it until you get the look that you want. So that's one way. That's one way to do the embroidery design without having any software. once you have software, then you are going to have a lot more options for your designs. And in fact, in the software, we have a Hebrew font, and I'm going to show you how you can use the Hebrew font with the English keyboard on your laptop. So that was Applique Creator. Now I'm going to switch over and share. Well, first of all, let me show you one other thing, and then I'm going to go into the software. So I'm going to go into the software, and I'm going to show you how to do Hebrew on your project, because I have created files for you to download it's in the comment section, where you can download the files associated with today's class. And there will be a file that has Pesach in Hebrew, which is the Hebrew word for Passover. And there's another file that has matzah. But you may, for another holiday, want to do a different Hebrew word. So I'm going to show you how to do that with the software. But before I do that, I also want to talk about the fact that if you're not comfortable with Hebrew, there is another font that's kind of Hebrew-esque, I think. So that font, I'm going to have to look on the software what the name of it is when we open up the software, but it looks like this. So that says Afikomen in English. Let me actually get a better close-up. This is a Afikomen sort of pouch that is when you have children, has a kind of a children's fun design. And as you can see, it says Afikomen. It's English, but like I said, it's sort of Hebrew-esque. And in order to make this font's in the software, then these Star Davids are in the software and in the super designs under religion. And then these little people are super designs that there's two different ones, and I brought them into Encore and then just repeated them to make this nice children's Afikomen pouch. So for a Seder where you have children, you could break the matzah in half, put it in here, and hide it, and you shouldn't have crumbs all over the place. And plus, it's sort of a fun little bag that they can look for, and so it's a fun thing. I think someday my grandson will use this. He's only 5 months old now, so it'll be a while, but it's made for him now. Okay, so that is the other font besides the Hebrew font. So now I'm going to show you how to do in the software to use the Hebrew font. So I'm going to share my screen, and you're going to see some like kind of crazy recursive screen for a second. And just bear with me. And now you should see the My Sonnet interface. So I have a new computer, and the trackpad is super sensitive. So it sometimes just picks up slight movements of my finger, like just now, which I didn't really intend. And again, I've turned down the sensitivity, and it keeps doing that. So your fonts are under letter. So you click on letter in the toolbar, and this capability, all these fonts are in the silver, gold, and platinum levels of My Sonnet. So if you click on this down arrow, you will see many, many, many different fonts. And if you can't find the Hebrew by scrolling quickly, what you can do is you can go to Font Manager and just type in Hebrew here, because we know it's called Hebrew. And it comes up here, and it tells you the size range of that particular font. So you can highlight it and then click close. And now you have Hebrew up here. Now that was the easy part. Now we have to figure out how the Hebrew letters correspond to our English letters on our laptop. And to do that, you go into Help, and you only have to do this once. You click on Help. Make sure that the magnifying glass is chosen because that's your search function, and put in Hebrew. Click Enter, and then you click on the first Hebrew entry here. And here is how the letters correspond to the letters on our laptops. Now, let me elaborate a little bit on that. So we have the letter C here. If we type the letter C with the Hebrew font chosen, you're going to get a Gimel. Gimel is not a C sound in the Hebrew alphabet. It's more of a G sound. So why is it associated with C? Well, if you remember back to Hebrew school, when you learned Aleph Bet, just like in elementary school when we learned our ABCs, there's a certain order that the alphabet is laid out in. In English, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In Hebrew, it's Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, and so on. So they just took the alphabet and lined it up with A through Z. And you have to, what I would do if I was working with a Hebrew project is I would print out this page so that I know that if I want a chet, then I have to type H. So that's how you figure out the correspondence of the Hebrew letters to the English letters on the laptop. Now going back to the hoop here, I'm going to touch letter again, or select letter again to get my fonts. And the next thing that's confusing, actually, I should go back to show this on this other screen. The next thing that is confusing is that Hebrew is read right to left, and our laptops are set up to type left to right. So we have to figure out, if you wanted to make a design that said Pesach, you're going to have to figure out how to spell that in Hebrew backwards. Yes, backwards. So Pesach starts with the Pei, ends with a Chet. So we're going to start with a Chet. So it would be Chet, Samech, Pei. So it would be H-O-Q. And I'll show you what I mean in the software. Okay, so I've typed in H-O-Q, and I click Apply, and now I have Pesach. Just drag this a little bit bigger. So this, just a little bit of background on this font. This font they're satin stitches. So you don't want to make it really big, even though these, it has green corners, because the satin stitches will get rather large and they could get caught on things. There is a way to go in and change the stitch type, but that's a little bit more than I want to get into today. I would just say, don't make this too big. And if you wonder if it's too big, you can go to View and click on Get Length, and then check the length of your, actually, let's make this a little bit bigger. We're going to enlarge our view. We'll go, and I enlarged it by going down here to the Zoom to Rectangle. When you click that and you draw a rectangle around your object, it just blows it up. It magnifies it. Doesn't make it bigger, it just magnifies your view. So I'm going to click on Get Length. And doesn't that look like a comb? It looks more like a comb to me than a ruler, but maybe that's just me. So I'm going to click on my trackpad and keep my thumb down and drag it to the end of the stitch there. And you'll see this is 4.3 millimeters. That's okay. You don't want to go above 8 or 9 for a satin stitch because then it just gets too loopy. So we're fine at this size. I'm going to click here to go back to the regular size. And this is like about a 5x5 hoop. So that gives you an idea of how big that is. So you could save this and you would have it for every Passover project you make from here on in. And that's what I would do. I would save this, and then each project I would pull it up and then add other embellishments around it. But I would save it so that I wouldn't need to create this every time. So now I'm going to go back to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and show you some things here. Got to go back to here. Okay, so I'm thinking you are seeing my icon interface right now, and the staff let me know if I didn't unshare properly. Yes, I'm good. Okay, good. So now I'm going to delete what I have here. I'm just touching outside the design, then I'm going to touch on delete all and get rid of that. And I had previously created a design, so it is in my cloud with the Hebrew. So I'm going to load the Pesach like I said that I would. And what I'm going to show you next is how I would create this matzah cover or pouch. It could be either one. Right now, what I did is I created the design. Well, I created the Hebrew letters in my Sonnet. Then this other design I created in Shape Creator on the icon. Now, I could have made this just a cover. I left this open to show you how I would make a pouch. And then I'll show you how I did the design in Shape Creator. So I just have to get my other fabric here. So I have this fabric that I just put right sides together and stitched along the edges. So I've got wrong side out, and I've got right side out on the outer portion. And then I would just stick this inside. Oh, actually thinking ahead, because I'm going to eventually stitch around the edge up here and have to turn it right sides out. You do want to leave a gap at the bottom about this big, 3 or 4 inches, because that way you can get the right sides turned out. But you take this and you're basically putting right sides together with your lining on the outside. So you line up your seams. I would first do the edges and then start pinning from the middle out so that you get a nice smooth seam at the top. And I'll show you a little trick for working with slippery fabric. This lining is kind of slippery and it wants to misbehave. So, I moved my camera. Bear with me, my camera got bumped. Now I need to refocus so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So if you're dealing with slippery fabric, like I want these to line up really nicely. So I'm going to open up both seams. And what wants to happen typically when I sew these things together, I'm going to line it up and then show you, is that I'll open it up and it'll be open when I first start sewing, and then somehow it gets messed up and they're not open anymore. So if you want to be really exacting and have both of these stay open, even though this is slippery, what I would do is I would put a pin here. So that's holding both the blue fabric and the white fabric where it should be. And then I would put a pin on the other side. Now, do you need to be this exacting with a matzah cover? Probably not, but there may be a time when you do want to be. So this way, as I'm sewing along, I'm going to end up with both seams both sides of the seam open the way I want it to be. And so I would do this side, I would do the other side, I would do the middle, and then do a seam all the way around. And then I should have a gap down at the base of my bag to pull this up so that, and I can then stuff the lining inside of my bag. So that's how I made this bag, this applique bag. I made that the same way. In fact, I don't think I've stitched the hole together yet. I have not. Still have to do that. So I have the hole here that I should stitch together before I use this. But I did do my seam, and then I just pull right sides out and stuff the lining in. And then what I would do, and I did do already, is I do a top stitch along the top, and that just makes it look nice and more professional. So let's stuff that back in there. So that's how you make a matzo pouch. Now I'm going to show you how to make the design in Shape Creator. And Shape Creator works pretty similarly. This design here works very similarly to Applique Creator. So going back to my screen here, I have this as my center part, and then I'm just going to make squares with different decorative stitches. So I go down to the bottom where it says Shape Creator and touch that. And here's my shapes here. This time I'm going to choose a square. And what I didn't do, the mistake I made and why that looks so crazy, is that I didn't deselect Pesach before I chose my square. So the machine thinks that I want Pesach to be all the way around the square. In fact, what I could do now is I could turn it right sides up, and I could just have Pesach going all the way around. Of course, it'll be upside down in some places, but that's not what we wanted to do. But just on a whim to show you what you could do that as a frame, but that's not what I intended to do. So I'm going to go back into Shape Creator. Actually, let's just delete this and start over. It'd be faster. So I'm going to touch outside of my design and delete all. And now I'm going to go back into Shape Creator, choose a square. And now I need to tell the creative icon what I want that square to be created from. Do I want it to be from a sewing stitch or an embroidery or what? So I'm going to go into my sewing stitches, and I'm going to pick maybe satin stitch like this. So now I have one stitch there. I have to go into edit and tell the creative icon I want it to go all the way around. So I could just hit this positive sign, or I can touch here and just guess that maybe I need 30 of those to fill it up. Well, it's pretty close, but I'm going to keep going until I have it a little bit more full. I also like to see that with these curved stitches that it's not hanging out off in space in a way that's unattractive. Okay. So now we have a shape. I'm going to go in and get my Pesach so I know how closely I want to put other squares. So that's in the center. Now I'm going to deselect it so that I don't, when I make another square, the Pesach won't be sucked into one of the sides of the square. So I'm going to touch Shape Creator and go in and choose a square. And I don't know that it got chosen. I know what happened. It's in here and we can't see it. Now I'm going to choose another stitch. And maybe some flowers. And now I need to fill the square up with flowers, so maybe 50 because they're small. Not bad, not a bad guess. Click OK. So I would just keep making more squares, just make them smaller or larger. And if there's a square that I don't like, I can go into my layers and just touch that layer and then go into edit and delete it and then make a new one. So you can make your own design on the fly very quickly like that. And so that's a nice way to end up with an original design and, for your matzo cover. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you is talk a little bit about how I had mentioned that you could download the file that has matzo or Pesach on it and then make your own design. Or you can, of course, go into the software and do your own Hebrew yourself, but it'd be easier just to use the ones that I created. But then you can go and make something a little bit fancier. Like this is using the matzo file. And then I chose this, the Star of David, which is one of the super designs. Actually, I should bring it over here so you can see it closer. I think it is a nice, attractive star. It, I probably should have angled it differently. I realize now it's kind of at a curve that I'm not crazy about. But, I've got the matzah in the middle, then some pretty flowers. This is one of the frames that are in the super designs that I think offsets this design very nicely. Show you one of the corners here. And then just putting a border around it, and I think it would make a nice gift. Okay, so those are a few different ideas for matzo covers for afikomen. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is how to make some, with the software, either a table placeholder or a napkin ring that also acts as a table placeholder because it has a name on it. So this is using the new function in my Sonnet that makes this super easy to make a whole table's worth of these designs. It's called Name Changer. And I'm going to go back into the software and show you how I did it. I'll do this napkin holder. So bear with me while I share my screen again. Okay, now I'm going to, you should be seeing my Sonnet here. I'm going to change the hoop and make it just a little bit bigger, maybe. Actually, 120 by 120 is fine. We'll leave it at that. And I'm going to get rid of Pesach by right-clicking and then clicking on Delete. Then I'm going to go into Letters. And this time, I'm not going to use the Hebrew letters because I don't know that everybody can read Hebrew at the table, although my kids could read it. I'm going to use my children's names with the font that I said is sort of Hebrew-esque. I think it's down here. Yes, it's called Mandala. And there's again that trackpad that's overly sensitive. Now I'm going to go back to letter. I've got mandala in here. And now I've got to use English letters because this is not Hebrew. So I'll put one of my daughter's names in there, Shayna. But I want it all the right case. And let's see, 30 seems a bit big. I'm going to put that at 20. And maybe slightly larger gap between the letters and click apply and see what that looks like. That looks a little big to me for our purposes, so I'm going to delete that and think about, let's take this down to 15. That's looking better. So I'm going to pull this down. Actually, we'll leave it right about there. Now I can go into Super Designs, and in the category Religious, see we have all these categories here because we have hundreds and hundreds of Super Designs. If we go into Religious, we have these Super Designs. And this is the design that I stitched out in blue and silver. And so that is the design that I would choose, and 84 is way too big. I'm going to take it down to maybe 30. See what it looks like. Oh, that's not what I want. I want this. You got to choose the design, or it doesn't read your mind, this software. It's very smart, but it doesn't read your mind. So you got to choose the design first. And then I'm going to take this to 30 because it went back to the default. And then bring this up here. Now, you know, of course, goes without saying, it's red and yellow. We can change it to whatever colors we want. You know, you can click over in the color select if you want to see what it'll look like with the colors you're thinking about. I'm just double clicking on the color and then choosing something more what would fit my taste. So now we've got a silver and blue Star of David. I think this should be blue as well. Actually, let's go over here and under color select, double click on that and make that blue. Okay, now we need a circle around this, or an oval rather. So I'm going to go into Create and go to Digitizing. And this file will stay connected to this new file, this new design we're creating. You'll see what I mean. We're not going to lose those designs that we just created. I'll go to Start a New Design with no picture. Click Next and Finish. And we're going to do Quick Create. And what I want is, I don't want an applique. I don't want a pattern fill. I just want a satin line. And I want to, let's see if we have an oval in here. Not sure. Let's just pick the circle and we can make it an oval. So we have a satin line chosen. We have a circle, and then we click on shape. And now we have our shape. And now we're going to make it into an oval. I'm just pulling the corners to kind of eyeball this, clicking and pulling. Still not used to my trackpad here, totally. Okay, so now I have my oval that I want. I could right click over here in the film strip if I want to go to the properties perhaps and make the satin stitch a different stitch or different width, like maybe I want it 3.5. It looks a little thick to me. And I could make it more dense or less dense. We'll leave it at 3.5. And then when I'm happy with it, I just click, or I just close this. And now it is on my original screen. Now it's not big enough, so we're going to make it bigger. I think my Shayna was too big to begin with. And let's go in. Let's go in and change the hoop size to make it a little bit bigger. So we have more room to work, like 200 by 200. Okay, so I want to make this a little bit more oval. And then I am going to Let's see if there's anything else I want to add to this. No, I think we're good. So we can, when we bring this design into the software, if we decide that we want to, say, put a buttonhole here or here to thread a ribbon through, or you could put an eyelet, you could do that once you send this over to your machine. So if I wanted to send this to my machine to stitch it out, I can go to File, Send, and then I have to send Express to my Sonnet device. If I click the first button, it'll send it to my storage in the cloud. And Phoebe is the name of my icon. So then I click Send. And the design is now on my icon, which you can't see because I'm sharing my screen. So I need to unshare. Bear with me a second here. Okay, so now I've got two designs on here, and I need to get rid of that original one we were working with before. So now I could go into my stitches and I could grab like a pretty eyelet if I wanted to just put, say, a satin cord through there. Or I could go in and choose a buttonhole if I want to use a ribbon and just place that. Just show you, you could put this over here. Of course, you want to do that in white, not black, and then make another copy and put that one over there. And I'll show you what that ends up looking like. I actually did this one a little bit differently. I put the buttonholes very close together with my son's name there and the Star of David with a circle around it using Create. And then the ribbon holds it in place down here. So let's see, I've got a notice here. Be sure to remind them, about my Facebook Live is coming up on 4/21, as I said before. And we will go into a lot more depth about how to use the circular attachment. This was just a fast overview to kind of, encourage your interest in the particular attachment. We will certainly go into a lot more depth and different ways to use it, different tasks that you can do with the circular attachment. And before I forget, I'm going to he wants me also to remind you that there's a survey that is in the caption and that we would really love for you to fill out, because the survey helps us to do planning for, as time goes on. We want to be able to do classes that interest you, that fit your needs, and support you in your use of our machines. So, please fill out the survey and let us know what you'd like to know more about. And that will help us to do our planning for 2022 and 2023. Also, there should be a link there to the design files that I told you about for the projects today. Now, we're getting down to the last few minutes. Any questions about the projects that I showed you today, or anything related to my Sonnet and the Hebrew? I guess not. Okay. So another project I was going to show you is my holiday banner. And this banner can be, because I put Happy Holidays, could be used for any holiday. And this was done using the ribbon attachment. So the ribbon attachment, I did use that to make the Star of David. With the ribbon attachment, creative embroidery attachment is an attachment you can get for your creative icon. that is a circular device that you wind ribbon around, and it actually embroiders the ribbon down in whatever design that you load. So the white ribbon is done with the circular attachment, and then I have a beaded circle that I did with the circular attachment. So that's one of the things I'm going to show on the circular attachment class, is that you can use some of our optional feet with the circular attachment and do something like this, where I can't really see it that well. Let's see if I can get it on here a little bit better. Yeah, that's much better. So you can sew beads down in a circle and with the circular attachment with the beading foot. So you need to have the circular attachment and the beading foot. But you can use the circular attachment with many feet. And then as I said, I did the ribbon embroidery with the creative embroidery attachment. I'm blanking on the name, our ribbon embroidery attachment. And then use that mandala font to just stitch out Happy Holidays. And then after I had created the design, I took the design into the Quilt Block Wizard, which added the stippling along the edges so that I did not need to quilt this. It was all part of the embroidery, and then used one of our optional feet to sew down the ribbon. So, there's lots of things that you can do for the holidays. And, between these two fonts, I think between the mandala font and the Hebrew font, there's, a lot of things that you can do. And I would love to see some of the things that you do. If you could post on this Facebook Live in the comments some pictures of the things that you've made for your Seder table. It would inspire me as well as the other people that have sat through this class today. And we can share all our ideas. And I hope that everybody has a very healthy and happy Passover with their family, that you have a wonderful Seder. This is our first Seder with our very first grandchild. So we're very happy about that. Passover is a wonderful family holiday. And I hope that all of yours is, as I said, healthy and happy. And happy sewing.